Have you ever felt a ghost following you? Not directly appearing, but sensing invisible eyes tracking every step, hearing labored breaths brushing past your ear, and the whole world around you twisting into something strange, as if hiding a game you never wanted to play? I am Mr. Whitaker, a literature teacher, and that is exactly what happened to me at Northridge High. On the first day, as I walked down the hallway, pale light from the windows fell on the old wooden floor, stretching long, trembling shadows with each step.
We see you
I heard fragmented whispers my
play
name,
with us.
but no one was near. I thought it was just my imagination, until I looked into an empty classroom and saw a circle. Students standing silently, a gentle rhythm echoing, and a tall, thin figure, face hollow, standing in the distance, staring straight at me. From that moment, I knew I had stepped into a game I could not escape. A game whose burden was no longer for children, it was mine. I had thought I had seen all childish games imaginable, but Liam, a skinny boy, and Emma, a quiet girl, showed me a game beyond reason. A cursed circle, whispered names, and tall, white, faceless figures appearing from every corner, stalking me with every step down the hallway, every glance around the classroom. I felt the weight pressing down on me, hearing the persistent whispers, "Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Whitaker." I could not scream.
No escape.
I could not escape. The game had chosen me, and now I was the named one, living in darkness among labored breaths and invisible eyes, forever trapped. The children were not merely playing a game. They were enacting a deadly ritual, one older and darker than any childish pastime could suggest. A ritual where the simple act of holding one's name too long carried a weight so immense that no one could ever lift it. The playground, normally a place of light and laughter, had transformed into a chamber of silent dread. The children moved deliberately, forming a circle that seemed almost alive, their steps slow and measured, each one perfectly in sync with the others, yet profoundly unnatural, like the rhythm of some dark pulse only they could hear. Laughter, shouting, the usual chaos of recess, everything dissolved into an oppressive silence so dense I could feel it pressing against my chest. Each inhale a struggle, each exhale heavy and deliberate. Inside the circle, names were whispered, one after another, the voices low, breathy, tangled together in a strange, haunting melody that lingered in the air, like the heartbeat of an unseen creature, slow and inexorable. The names seemed to twist and stretch, echoing off the empty spaces around them, and with each whisper, a tension grew, tangible, coiling around my legs like smoke. Any child who uttered their name was compelled to step into the center, a place that felt like the eye of the storm, hollow-eyed, shoulders trembling, burdened with an invisible weight that bent them inward, an invisible force pressing down with an unbearable gravity. Their faces were pale, eyes wide yet empty, as if staring into a void that only they could perceive, their bodies quivering under the strain of a secret no one else dared acknowledge. Liam was such a child, skinny, shoulders hunched, his posture curling into itself like a leaf folding in on a freezing wind. His eyes were deep, dark, and unsettlingly knowing, as though he could see beyond the playground, beyond the physical world, straight into some lurking horror I could not comprehend. He did not merely stand there. He seemed to exist in a different plane, tethered to some invisible force that weighed upon him like chains. Every time I looked at him, a shroud of darkness seemed to gather around him, tangible and cold, pressing in from all sides. I could feel it in the air, an almost sentient presence, like invisible hands squeezing his chest, draining any trace of warmth or joy, leaving behind a frozen emptiness that seeped outward, infecting the space around him. The aura was suffocating, thick, almost moving, curling around him and reaching toward me, as if warning me that the burden he bore could not be shared, could not be understood, and yet threatened to pull me in, step by step, whisper by whisper, into the same darkness. One afternoon, weak sunlight streamed through the hallway windows as I stood watching the playground. Liam was in the circle, shoulders shaking, breath rapid. The surrounding students began their rhythm, names repeated in whispered unison like a dark ritual. Suddenly, a tall, thin, faceless figure flashed across the playground, shoulders brushing the ceiling, its unnaturally long limbs twisting beyond natural limits. Leaves swirled in a cold vortex, whispers echoing. Say your name, say your name. Cold wind brushed my skin, sending shivers down my spine. My heart raced, hands went cold, but when I chased it, it vanished. Silence descended, so deep I could hear my own panicked breaths. I knelt beside Liam, voice hoarse. Liam, is there something beyond the game? He shook his head, shoulders trembling, hands gripping his backpack, whispering, no one dares to speak, or they will. Each word drawn, heavy, horrified, as if naming a dread no one wished to mention. I felt the strange cold around us, an invisible pressure weighing down. Liam carried a fear, and that fear spread, wrapping around me, constricting my chest. The space was unnervingly silent, but I knew, somewhere in that circle, invisible yet unmistakable, children's eyes were still upon me. I could feel their gaze, sharp and piercing, tracking my every movement even from a distance. The rhythmic whispers still wound through the air, low and persistent, curling around the edges of my mind like smoke, impossible to escape. And lurking in the corners of the room, tall, thin shadows slithered silently, their shapes elongated and grotesque, moving with a fluidity that seemed to defy natural law, waiting with a patient hunger, stalking each step I took. The game had long since outgrown the playground. It had left childhood behind entirely. That night, returning to my apartment, the darkness pressed in with a suffocating weight, thick and viscous, curling around me like a living creature, tendrils wrapping tightly, squeezing, insinuating themselves into every crevice. I flicked on the light, praying for safety, but the weak glow only illuminated a small corner of the room. The rest of the space sank into a blackness so dense it seemed almost solid, a darkness that could swallow sound and thought alike. My pulse raced. Then came a noise, a subtle, deliberate cracking, crack, crack, like bones folding, bending, twisting just out of sight, echoing softly yet insistently against the walls. On my desk, a pile of papers, neatly stacked just hours before, now fluttered lightly as if moved by invisible hands, the sheets trembling, some curling upward like leaves in a phantom wind. My chest tightened as I approached, every step hesitant, my heart hammering in my ears. And then I saw it, on a grading sheet, written in jagged, uneven letters. My name stared back at me. Mr. Whitaker, slanted, quivering, ink deep red, thick and vivid as fresh blood. My entire body froze. There was no way anyone could have entered. The door was locked. Every rational thought dissolved into a haze of fear. A curtain swayed gently, though the air was still. My breath caught in my throat. Then, emerging from the shadows, the figure appeared. Impossibly tall, white shoulders grazing the ceiling, a body grotesquely twisted at impossible angles, joints creaking like old wood under strain. Its face was a void, a deep black nothingness that seemed to consume light itself. It tilted its head slowly, deliberately, as if listening not just to sounds, but to my very thoughts. Silence fell, so dense it pressed against my eardrums. Before a voice rasped into my ear, hoarse and intimate, chilling me to the bone. "Mr. Whitaker." I stumbled backward, tripping over a chair, my body colliding with the hard floor. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing against my chest, crushing, suffocating. Hundreds, no, thousands of invisible eyes bore down from every direction, from walls, ceiling, and floor, all watching, calculating, patient. Reality warped around me. Clocks stopped mid-tick. The faint hum of the city beyond my windows vanished as if swallowed by a vacuum. Every ordinary sound evaporated, leaving only the pounding of my own heartbeat. A relentless drum echoing in my ears, blending with the whispers that seemed now to rise from the floor beneath me, from the shadows themselves, from someplace far. The next morning, I arrived at school, eyes darkened, determined to join the game, partly out of curiosity, partly to free Liam. On the playground, the children stood in a circle. Weak morning light reflected off wet leaves, casting a murky glow. I stepped into the center, inhaled deeply, and whispered, "Mr. Whitaker." Instantly, light dimmed. Cold air swept. Leaves spiraled around me. Liam's laughter sounded, but distorted, echoing from a place beyond this world. A tall, thin, white figure stood at the edge, body leaning as if blown by wind, yet the wind blew the opposite. It moved silently, gliding across the ground, shadow stretching like a thread. Cold ran down my legs, invisible hands gripping my ankles. I wanted to scream, but my mouth froze. The game spiraled out of control. Liam, the trembling boy, looked at me with hollow eyes. Slowly, he raised his hand, pointing to the old hallway. I followed. The bathroom door creaked. Another faceless figure slithered out, twisted as if bones were broken. It lunged at me, silently. I stumbled into the wall. Cold burned through me. Its face loomed, empty, yet I could hear its breathing inside my head. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, it was gone. Only long scratches on the wall remained. The next day, the classroom was eerily empty. No voices, no footsteps, only chalk scratching the board. Letters I wrote shifted, twisted, stretched, as if invisible hands dragged them. Sighs echoed from dark corners, cold, tired, haunting. I bent to pick up chalk. When I stood, a faceless shadow reflected behind me, a long, bony hand reaching, gripping my shoulder. Cold paralyzed me. I turned, nothing. Silence swallowed the room. Emma, the quietest girl, was the only one who met my eyes. After class, she whispered, "You cannot hold it forever. It will destroy you." Her words choked me. Shadows appeared everywhere, behind doors, on ceilings, under desks. They twitched, ran close. Each time I turned, another appeared nearer. Footsteps echoed, labored breaths mixed with wind. I ran, but corridors were endless. Lights flickered. Footsteps behind grew closer, steady, unceasing. Falling at the bottom of the stairs, I looked up to see dozens of white figures around me, motionless. Wind blew, windows rattled, whispers everywhere. "Mr. Whitaker, say your name." I cannot recall if I screamed or cried. I only know the playground was empty when I woke, wine swirling leaves. And somewhere in that endless void, I knew the game continued. During recess, the gray sky spread pallid light, cold and lifeless. Liam stood trembling, hands clutching his shirt. Students formed a circle around him, steps heavy like funeral drums. Emma stood beside me, eyes calm, reflecting something not of this world. No words, but I understood. I knew what to do. I inhaled deeply and whispered my name. Mr. Whitaker. The world shifted. Air thickened. Light receded. Sound swallowed. Wind ceased. Gray shrouded everything. Students' shadows blurred, merged with the ground. From beneath, bony hands emerged, grabbing my ankles. Cold, wet as mud, their grip horrifyingly strong. I struggled, dragged back, inch by inch. The surroundings blurred, windows warped, whispers everywhere. Say your name, say your name. I shivered, heart racing. Light flashed. Emma stepped into the circle, touched my shoulder. A gentle touch, and the burden flowed from me like thin black smoke to her. She shivered, remained steady, eyes calm, gripping the tattered paper, the burden of the game. I collapsed, gasping, feeling lighter. Wind blew, the circle dissolved. Students dispersed. The game did not end. Since that day, I live with the sense of being watched. In every corner, even alone, I feel it. Lights flicker in the mirror. A face without eyes or mouth stands behind me. Walking the hallway, wind blows backward, whispers brushing past. Mr. Whitaker, the call never stops. At night, in my apartment, I hear it from walls, cracks, shadows. Occasionally, a tall, thin figure flashes, arm brushing walls, leaving long black streaks. One night, waking from a nightmare, streetlights shone through curtains. Small, wet footprints led from the door to my bed. No sound, only cold creeping into my collar. Then the voice whispered, close as wind. Say your name, I curled, hands over ears. But the sound persisted, clearer, nearer, until I almost screamed. Everything went silent. In the mirror, I saw myself, but without a face. The shadow tilted its head, smiling invisibly. The next day, Emma came as if nothing happened. She and Liam sat in the yard. The circle formed again. I watched, heart heavy. Everything repeated. Circle, rhythm, whispers. Only this time, as I passed, every head turned to look at me. At once, hollow eyes. I stood frozen, wind swirling, leaves flying. Amid the rustle, I heard my own voice, faint then near. Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Whitaker. I realized I was never freed. The burden does not disappear. It only changes form. I am no longer an outsider. I am part of the game. I am the named one, and this game will never end. At night, whispers begin again in walls, my breath, every shadow. Whether in bright classrooms or a cold apartment, they're there, endlessly whispering, calling my name. I know wherever I go, alive or dead, the game will find me, and my name will forever be called in the darkness.